Well, hello there, and thanks for tuning in once again to Gene and Roger Talk Movies. I'm
And
Roger,
sometimes Jamie.
and sometimes Jamie,
Yeah.
who is here again with us. We should maybe retitle the show Gene, Roger, and Jamie Talk Movies, but we're
Yeah.
sticking with the title that we got. And
Right.
today, we are
Good.
it is good, and we are talking about what I consider a very interesting subgenre of horror, and also one of the most difficult ones for a director to pull off, and that is horror comedy. And we looked at
Yes.
two examples, Shaun of the Dead and Zombieland. And I will just come right out and say this is a good example of, in my opinion, a movie that can do it right and a movie that kind of stumbles a little bit in trying to blend and meld horror and comedy. Gene, what are your initial thoughts on horror comedies?
It's a little kind of a difficult concept, and I think it's from the director's standpoint to be difficult to pull off, like you said. But I think in these two movies, Zombieland and Shaun of the Dead, I think they pull it off well. Clearly, the movies are about horror elements. A lot of people are dying in a lot of gruesome ways, and but it's also funny, which is crazy if you think about what I just said. A lot of people are dying, but then it's funny. So, but both movies definitely work. I mean, Jamie and I were talking about the score of both movies, on the way over here, and they just work. They pull off a lot of popular music, like a Queen, a lot of like Led Zeppelin. No, not Led Zeppelin, but Van Halen, especially in Zombieland.
It was Metallica.
And Metallica, yeah, very good. Yeah, and so Zombieland and Shaun of the Dead, they pull it off. I think they approach their movies. The directors and producers approach the movies from different angles, but I think they both, pulled it off. Yeah, both movies are cool.
Well, and Edgar Wright directed Shaun of the Dead, and he's, of course, well recognized for being able to blend these types of elements into films. However, Shaun of the Dead is a movie that I feel actually would have worked better by completely dropping all of the comedic elements, because it is a traditional zombie siege type horror film at the end of the day. And Gene, how do you reconcile the beginning of Shaun of the Dead, where it's just basically straight up comedy, and then it segues into, like, for example, a sequence where Shaun has to kill his mother because she's turned to a zombie? There's nothing funny about that, and at that point in the film, it's being played very seriously.
Yeah, but I think the movie, both movies, the themes of both movies are that, we don't need to be infected with this virus to be a zombie. We can definitely be a zombie all on our own. And I think at the beginning, they're in the Winchester, the bar, and Shaun is talking with Liz, Shaun's girlfriend. She's a very devoted girlfriend, and clearly Shaun is a zombie straight up.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing changes his life. He has no ambition. Does the same thing every day. He hangs out with this guy Ed, who is just
Total loser.
well,
He's total.
Shaun
Total
loves him, but to like any other person, he's just a completely revolting human being. And so, and Liz is just pleading with him, is like, hey, it's like, I love you, but I see the future, and my it's bleak, and I don't want to go this road, and let's do something different. Shaun is like, of course, the typical guy is like, yeah, I'm gonna do it, and then he gets back to his normal routine, and does he do any of it? No, of course not. And so that's just kind of the beginning of the movie, and but I think, and Zombieland plays with that as well, but yeah, no, both of them really work with me, especially at the beginning. I think the comedy element in Shaun of the Dead adds to that message, is that we can be zombies, and we need to shake things up a bit. And yeah, because Shaun is so far into being a zombie, even though he's a regular person. I mean, you remember, Jamie, you were watching this, and he goes, after the second day, he goes into the little convenience store, and I mean, there's blood on the floor, which he actually trips on. There's blood in
There's blood on the door. He just does his normal stuff, and he just grabs like a beer, and then he leaves and doesn't notice anything.
Yeah, and he pays on the counter. He talks. He says something to the convenience store owner, and he's walking around. He doesn't even notice that, that there's the guy, the jogger guy who was jogging normally before is actually sprinting, like he's running away from something. There's like holes in the windshields. He just doesn't notice any of that. So it's just like he's still a zombie. But it being funny adds to that.
Right, but I think when you're talking about tone in these movies, I do still think Zombieland handles the melding of comedy and horror better. And the reason I'm saying that is Shaun of the Dead is very much straight up slapsticky at certain points.
Oh, yeah.
And things like that. And I look at Zombieland, and really it's a horror film with comedic elements in it. And the horror or the comedy is coming directly from the characters themselves. I love the fact that one of the traits of Woody Harrelson's character is, he really wants to... Tallahassee, thank you. Of course, welcome to me, where I don't remember anyone's names.
You got to know the character names, because we live in that world.
Right, but I do like the fact that, I'm looking for Twinkies. Every time I have an opportunity to get a Twinkie, I'm going to go try to get one of those. But I think it's a natural progression kind of his character, or just a trait of his character, and it never gets over the top in Zombieland with just straight up slapsticky, wacky comedy, except for the Bill Murray sequence. But it stays well within the horror tropes, right? The zombies are everywhere. They're just blowing them away, really graphically violent, which is great for this movie and the horror comedy.
Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead does that a lot with just over-the-top gore. But I just think Zombieland, for me, was the better example of how to do horror comedy right, because it's just flowing out from just the natural progression. I liked the Jesse Eisenberg character,
Columbus,
thank you, who had all of his sets of rules. And so even though those rules led to kind of comedic set pieces, it still fit within that world, right? In order to survive, I've had to adopt these rules to live. And then as he progresses, he ends up actually violating some of those rules. So I just think it's really difficult for these directors to pull this off effectively. And we all know horror comedy has been around for as long as movies have been made.
Yeah.
One of the more, right, and Jamey, one of the more early popular ones was Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, right? And you probably don't know who Abbott and Costello were, but they were comedians. Their career was kind of faltering. Some dude said, well, hey, if we put these guys in with these universal monsters, right, Dracula, Frankenstein, etc.,
it could have been good.
Maybe it'll be funny and hilarious. But what it did, and it was a huge popular film, but what it really did was it cheapened the universal monsters, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, the Invisible Man, and you then didn't see them again for
as like super scary creatures. They're now just like comedic relief stuff.
Yeah, and so they were kind of disrespecting the source material in order for laughs, but really what it did was, it cheapened it, and it was like 2 decades before another Frankenstein movie was ever made. And I think you have movies like that really spoof and attack, I guess, horror movies, Scary Movie, straight up spoof. It's just making a mockery of all these slasher movies, and Student Bodies is another one that does that.
I haven't seen it, but I've seen the poster, and it looks super stupid.
Right, and so I do like the fact that like Zombieland and Shaun of the Dead to some level was very much respecting the zombie type genre. What are your thoughts, Gene?
Yeah, I thought Shaun of the Dead, like especially like when they all went to the Winchester, which is, again, Liz hates that place, but they always end up going there. But they're in the Winchester, and the bar is surrounded. So I think it's got a lot of like that. Any horror movie should have some moments where there's tension. There's some element of where you're trapped or you're out of control or you're not. Because we see, as human beings, we like to be in control, or at least feel that we're in control. But when you're in a bar, the Winchester, and it's surrounded by zombies, and sure, you have a rifle, but none of you know how to shoot straight.
Right.
No, you're definitely trapped. And then finally they break in, and they have to try to escape to the basement. But I think there are definitely some very horror elements in there because there's a couple, David and Diana. I mean, you know, they both die there, and you know, and one, I think it was Diana, right? It's Jamie. She sacrifices herself because you know, she wants to go after David, and she could have run, but she decided not to run. So yeah, so.
Well, and that was where I was kind of having a problem with Shaun of the Dead and how they melded comedy and horror, where Zombieland, the comedy is just a natural part of the whole world they're in and a natural progression of the characters, so to speak. And Shaun of the Dead is wacky comedy kind of at the beginning, and then we're getting into like serious horror movie elements there when they are under siege in the Winchester.
Right,
like, you know,
they were trapped.
And I just think it was difficult for that director to really effectively meld those two genres together, just because it's almost like you have two different movies. You've got a kind of a comedy at the beginning, and then they try to do straight horror, you know, as the movie progresses. Zombieland is kind of the same tone throughout, because Zombieland starts with, the big Metallica song, of course, and all of that, but then he's also listing out his rules of how to stay alive, and then they're intercutting, you know, kind of these wacky sequences of people not following those rules. You know, the lady not putting her seatbelt on and just getting blasted out of the car.
And I also thought breaking the fourth wall made it a little bit more funnier because it just felt like more like, I don't know, natural or something. I don't know.
Right,
He was telling us how to survive. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, it's almost like he found a video diary of his or something like that, where
like
he's
a how-to YouTube video or something.
Exactly.
But both movies are similar, kind of in that fourth wall elements, because like clearly Columbus has all of his rules, and Columbus is sharing those rules with us very openly, and then they put up.
Well, he doesn't share all of them. He shares like only
like
5.
right. He has like 23 rules or something.
No, it was like 33 or something.
Right. But he only.
But the big ones are like cardio, avoid bathrooms, double tap seat belts, check the back seat, stuff like that.
Right. Well, I think double tap is the big one.
Yeah.
He keeps going back to that one, and also enjoy the little things.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
and don't be a hero.
And don't be a hero.
Oh,
which is the one.
Which he breaks and he becomes the hero.
Right, because he has to save Wichita. Right. But then both movies kind of, well, in that movie they break the fourth wall by that, but I think in Shaun of the Dead there are lots of luck, and I noticed this, and I noted it in my notes. They make a lot of really quick cuts between scenes,
like small little montages. I noticed.
Right, really fast all the way through, this happens the whole movie, you know. So I think that's similar elements, you know, where they're relaying to us as the audience, so like what's going on, but in a kind of a funny way.
Yeah, and Gene, I think you had another great point about the fact that they use not their real names in Zombieland, and why they would do that.
Yeah, it's their locations, right, or something.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because Columbus was going to Columbus. Oh yeah.
Tallahassee, Wichita, Little Rock, and then there's 406 because
which is the neighbor girl.
Yeah, the neighbor girl, because she lives in apartment 406, right? Amber Heard, right? So we all know about her, but yeah. I mean, we could talk their deeper elements. I think them not using their real names kind of points to a deeper things going on, you know, which aren't really funny, but.
Right, yeah. Well, but I think that's why Zombieland is maybe a better melding of the horror and comedy, because they're using these made-up names, and the thought being, and I think Woody Harrelson and Emma Stone mentioned it in the film, where
Wichita.
Thank you, where we do this because we don't ever want to really get to know you. We don't want to have, because of this world we're in, you could die in 5 minutes. 5 minutes from now, you could be killed.
Or actually like 2 seconds.
Right. And so we are just using these made-up names because, we could be separated in an hour and never see each other again. You know, so we don't want to get close.
Yeah.
Well, they do eventually get close at the end. It's like, and Columbus said it was like a little family or something.
Right, which is again why I think Zombieland is a better melding of horror and comedy, because it does have these progressions like that. And then when she does share her real name with the Jesse Eisenberg character,
a bit of character development, which is really nice.
Yeah, you know.
Right, but Shaun of the Dead has that too, though, because at the end, in Shaun of the Dead, Liz and Shaun are actually they're living together, and Shaun seems to have developed a greater respect for Liz. Like he asks kind of her permission for him to go out to the shed, and in the shed is his friend Ed, and really playing the same role that he did before, because all he ever did before was play video games, but this time he's a zombie in the shed. But what is he doing?
He's playing video games.
Playing video games. So, in a way, his character never changed.
Well, and that's probably the most interesting sequence for me in Shaun of the Dead, because does he respect Liz anymore? Because it almost looks to me like Liz has succumbed to the idea of it's just okay to lounge around and hang out now and kind of be more like Shaun.
No, I don't know. I don't think so. I think Shaun is trying to be different.
Okay, because my thought when I saw that, because her character seemed different there at the end, and it seemed more like, no, I'm okay just being like Shaun and just hanging out and just kind of going day by day. And has she adopted that because, we just went through this zombie crisis and all this horror, and maybe it's okay to just be hanging out and I don't have to have these big, long dreams or whatever.
Yeah, I think they were going to go somewhere, but he asked her permission to go to the shed for a little bit. Mm-hmm. She's like, okay.
Okay. But horror comedies, again, can be very tricky. I did mention the Bill Murray sequence earlier in Zombieland, which most people really love. I actually hate it. I know, because that is the first time in the film where you're really taken out of the zombie land and it becomes kind of this wacky comedy there for like a minute and a half. And for those who haven't seen the movies, well, sorry, we're spoiling the whole thing, and I'm going to do some more spoiling right now.
And we should probably say that in the beginning that we're spoiling it.
If you've been listening to us and you don't know how we run things by now, that's on you. But they go to Bill Murray's house, mansion in Beverly Hills or wherever it is, and amazingly enough, Bill Murray is still in the house, and he's just fine, and he's dressed up
like a zombie, and he's like,
he thinks that'll protect him.
Yeah, and he talks about how he went and golfed, and it was great because there was nobody around, and all this other stuff. And then, anyway, eventually, they decide, let's play a prank on the Jesse Eisenberg character.
Which is dumb because he's holding a double barrel shotgun. He walks up like a zombie and then he just blasts him.
Right, and so then he ends up getting killed.
They're not thinking too well because they're all high.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So they're not thinking too clearly.
Right. But to me, where the director of Zombieland kind of dropped the ball is I would have just made it that Bill Murray was a zombie when you got there, a real zombie, and it would have stayed within the tone, and you still could have had the comedic element because Jesse Eisenberg could have still killed Bill Murray, and then it would have been like the Woody Harrelson character going, oh my God, you killed Bill Murray, and it still would have been funny, but it would have been not as... Because it's almost like, for me, that movie takes a detour for like 2 minutes there when it's dealing with Bill Murray doing his ad-libbing dialogue.
Yeah, it actually does feel like that a tiny bit, but I still enjoyed the comedy elements there.
Yeah, I mean, most people love that scene, of course.
I think to me, it kind of just shows how morbid they've become. Because here they shoot him and he's a real person, and then... But the movie just becomes really absurd there because Bill Murray is taking his last breath, but then he has to take another last breath. But then I think he takes a third last breath.
He would die right there because that was like a chest shot, to the heart.
You would have died immediately. But and then they wrap up his body in some sheet, and then instead of burying it.
And they throw it off
the ledge.
And they throw it off the balcony. And then they give him a shoot off.
Right. They give him a 1, 2, 3, a 4-gun salute.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think it totally works within the whole thing because getting Columbus is kind of like he walks us through the whole movie, and he's walking us through that scene as well. And no, I think it pretty fits because in that whole scene, in a way, I think it's more about Columbus and Wichita because his big thing is about, he's got to push the hair over her ear, and then he actually does it with Wichita there in that house,
right?
And so, so it's kind of a big moment of growth for Columbus.
But I don't know. I would just love to hear from anyone who rewatches Zombieland and just kind of pay attention to that Bill Murray sequence and really see, does this sequence really fit with the tone of the rest of the film, and just kind of think about that for a little bit. And then Gene, Shaun of the Dead, of course, Simon Pegg is done a whole bunch of other real interesting comedies, Hot Fuzz and things like that, where he kind of consistently tries to put himself into movies where he's melding these horror and comedy elements, or action and comedy and things like that.
Mission Impossible for sure.
Oh, and then Mission Impossible. But in the sequence where they are in the Winchester and the siege is happening, did you notice any of the direct shout-outs to Night of the Living Dead?
I haven't seen that movie, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I have to confess, it's been a really long time.
Yeah, so they cribbed quite a bit. There was some dialogue there. We're coming to get you, Barbara. Things like that, which are direct lines from Night of the Living Dead. So I did think there is some respect for the genre, where they're kind of cribbing, for people who have seen a lot of horror films, and especially in the zombie genre, they do crib a lot of little things, kind of subtle shout-outs to people.
I thought they made fun of the zombies at the end of the movie when they were on the television. They were in the game shows and working retail and blah, blah, blah.
Right, and that was very interesting too, Jamey, for me, because, isn't that exactly what we would probably do?
Yeah.
Right.
Like after it all blows over. Yeah. And they just own a reality TV show. Boom, boom, you get... Yeah.
The 19-year-old store clerk that was a coworker of Shaun. He's turned into a zombie, and at the end it says chains around his neck.
And he's pushing around shopping carts.
He collects shopping carts from the parking lot, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you can look at this movie in a deeper elements too. For sure, with Zombieland, I was talking over with Jamey, is I think for humanity, I think for us to survive, we need four things. We need food, water, shelter, and safety. So I think
and entertainment, because it's like a need, or you go insane.
Well, it falls under that fourth element, safety, for sure. But here both these movies toy with the idea of because clearly in both movies they have food, they have water, and they have shelter, but yet they have no sense of safety. And so this is what could happen if our society were to remove that element of safety. And I don't know, just to throw it out there, maybe just think about it a little bit. I think our society currently is kind of a little toying with that. I see our safety element kind of, I don't know. That's a topic for another time or
I think
place,
you can,
but I think we were definitely touching on that.
Both these movies do that, and just to kind of back up your point a little bit, I mean, we could pull up CNN or Fox or MSNBC or whatever news we wanted to right now, and the headline is going to be, here's some murder somewhere, or some mass shooting somewhere, or Russia's going to get us, or whatever, because there is a lot of that, no, we're not really safe anymore kind of thing going on. Sure. But I do like that in both movies, because both movies basically end with kind of a siege type mentality. They're in the Winchester in Shaun of the Dead, and then they're in the park. What was the name of that park?
Pacific Playland.
Pacific Playland. Thank you.
Yeah, and they have to go there because it's old memories and blah. I don't know how Little Rock thought that there would be no zombies there, because she tells him, there's did you hear there's no zombies here?
Yeah, there's no zombies at Pacific Playland. Woohoo!
We all fun.
Come on.
Well, and
I think they're just chasing a childhood memory. They're just, they're desperate.
There wasn't any zombies in it until they turned all the power back on.
And the zombies are like, look, let's go.
Lights.
And I do like the sequence in that Playland where they get onto that ride that just blasts
it just drops you, but then they get stuck up there, and then they have to shoot all the zombies coming up.
Yeah, I just think that was a really, in a traditional straight horror film, that would have been a really, really intense sequence there, where this device lifts you up and then it brings you back down to the horde and then lifts you back up again,
to revisit
I think it's the ride is that it just goes up and then it goes down and then it just stays down. So They would have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
If it was working properly, they probably would have died.
Oh yeah. No.
Yeah, it would have gone up and straight
So
down.
you could see just kind of how the director of Zombieland really, in my opinion, understood the horror genre and how you have to have these scenes of tension. And he never went over the top with the comedy, which is why I like that movie much better. And I think he did a much better job of melding the horror and comedy elements than Shaun of the Dead did. Edgar Wright.
What I
that.
thought was kind of silly. It's a small little scene, but I just thought it was kind of like stupid was how the Hostess truck, the company that has only has snowballs in it. Like, it wouldn't have a variety of like stuff.
I don't know how Hostess
It would,
works, man.
I thought it was kind of
Only
ridiculous how it
snowballs.
only had snowballs in it.
You know, what kind of Zombieland hell is he in where you open the Hostess truck and it's just snowballs in there, you know?
Right, he was looking for a Twinkie. But it would also have like zingers and ding dongs and all those other things, right?
Like,
So we gotta have them all. Yeah, because what's the purpose of that truck is you're restocking, right? So you
well,
have
yeah,
everything.
but it should have everything.
It's funny.
Or maybe someone already looted all the Twinkies.
Well, that would have been hilarious if there was some side track where he's chasing somebody who keeps stealing all the Twinkies. That would have been something.
But a thing I liked about Zombieland is that Columbus really walks us through the movie. But in a way, we see Columbus evolving, and Columbus is changing. I think none of the other characters changed. Tallahassee, Wichita, Little Rock. But we see Columbus definitely evolving as a human being, and even though the world around him is, destroyed, there's no safety anywhere. But he as a person is changing and is growing. So in a way, I think Zombieland leaves us with a better walking away from the movie. You're more fulfilled, and in a way you feel happier, if that's the right word to use, because you've gone along with Columbus on his journey, and you've noticed how much he has grown and how much he has changed.
Well, and
That's
I think,
pretty cool, I think.
You're absolutely right. This is, again, why I like Zombieland better. Even the Woody Harrelson character, who starts out as this big, tough, rough guy, and they do that great sequence.
It's like Batman or something, because vengeance.
Right.
His kid
Vengeance,
died.
Well, but see, the great thing is they set it up initially that, oh, my dog died.
Right.
The zombies killed my puppy. And then later you realize, as he's becoming maybe more thought about, hey, maybe a family is okay. Maybe I can actually start trusting people again. Yeah. And then he divulges that, no, it was actually my son that got killed. Just beautiful moments in that film just to show the development of the characters and stay within the realm of the horror genre and still allow for comedy to be happening.
Yeah.
Which is dramatically different than Shaun of the Dead, which is wacky comedy at the beginning, and then, oh, I've got to shoot my zombie mom in the face now.
Yeah, and then the stepdad has a really big like speech about Shaun in the car, and then he turns to a zombie.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
And so I'm just going back to the fact that, to me, these two movies, and I'm glad we selected these two as our examples, because in my opinion, Shaun of the Dead is nowhere near as effective in melding the two elements as Zombieland is. It just didn't quite seem to know how to do it properly. Zombieland does it properly. It is basically a horror movie with comedy elements throughout it that fit within the movie itself and the horror genre. And Shaun of the Dead is more like, well, we want to be really funny, and now we're going to get really serious right now for like a half an hour, and then the movie's going to end. And it's just weird. It's a weird tonal shift to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's the Shaun of the Dead also to like just again, I think it really Shaun of the Dead hammers the point about us being like living zombies a little harder. Because there's just like this absolutely absurd sequence where Ed, the big guy, Shaun's friend, for some reason, I guess because he's such a zombie, all he does is play video games. At first of all, he says, I really want to drive Pete's car. Mm-hmm. You remember? And then he wants to get Pete's car.
And Pete is the roommate who is the nude zombie.
Yeah, the nude zombie, yeah. And so then they drive over to Shaun's mom's house, and then he really wants to drive Philip's car, the stepdad, which guess is
a nice car.
It's a Jaguar,
yeah.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so there's this whole sequence where there's zombies all around, but he's driving this car super fast with super fast or super loud music, remember? Mm-hmm. And then it's just like, I think Shaun of the Dead gains a lot of its comedy in that it's just in its superposition of things that shouldn't fit together. Like driving a car fast, loud music, enjoying that. Yet there's all kinds of death and destruction around you. It's just, I think maybe they're pointing out that, how isolated we could be in our thinking, but stuff like that, I think really drives a lot of the Shaun of the Dead comedy.
Yeah, and I just don't think it melds properly, like the scene where Ed decides to take the phone call while they are trying to break into the Winchester and zombies are all around them, and he takes the phone call from his drug connection. Is that funny, or what is that? I don't even know what that was.
It was
right,
it was
and I just, again, Shaun of the Dead, I like that movie. I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm saying in the realm of horror comedy, it doesn't work the way something like Zombieland works, or Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which is beautiful if you haven't seen that movie. And Evil Dead 2 is another movie that just really melds horror and comedy perfectly. But anything else to say about these two films, or horror comedy in general?
It's a fun concept, but yeah, it could be done very poorly or very well.
Yeah, I think if I had to choose between one or the other, Roger, I probably would agree. I'd probably choose Zombieland.
Yeah, definitely Zombieland tops Shaun of the Dead, I think.
Yeah, for me, it's slightly. Although I think, Roger, for you, I think Zombieland would be much.
Oh yeah, well, and the other thing I'll point out about Zombieland, it's in the sweet spot for movies in general. How long is it? 82 minutes. Shaun of the Dead, hour and 40 minutes. That movie overstayed its welcome by about 20 minutes for sure.
Yeah, they're both good movies. We definitely enjoyed them all. They're definitely cool. Although, however, Zombieland, there is a sequel to Zombieland 2. I think it has the same characters in it, but
it does. It does have the same characters. I kind of want to see it.
You want to see it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I heard it had really bad reviews, so I don't know. Maybe we could review it and go over it ourselves.
Right, and before we sign off, I mean, one thing I do need to point out. I saw Zombieland at the theater. I did not see Shaun of the Dead at the theater. And for me, if the poster says, the laugh out loud horror hit or something like that, yeah, I'm probably not going to go to the theater to see that. I can see that at home. But I'm glad I did see Zombieland at the theater. It was a lot of fun with the crowd. But any final thoughts on this?
I think breaking the fourth wall in movies is super great. Yeah, I like it. Really like it when people break the fourth wall. It's fun.
So do you like it because Zombieland, I think, broke the fourth wall very effectively.
It did.
It's
it
like
did
this
it well.
voiceover and kind of this. I'm leading you through this movie. Do you like breaking the fourth wall when a character looks directly at the camera and talks directly to you?
It's just like talking to us. I just find it kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. I really like, and I mean, this is not a horror film by any means, but in Spaceballs, I really like when Dark Helmet and the other characters are using the movie itself to fast forward and back up, and they're doing the whole thing about, well, we need to back up and see what's going on in this VHS tape of the movie we're filming right now, and then they get to the sequence where what's happening, well, it's now is what's happening, and they're looking back and forth. That's a really good breaking of the fourth wall, in my opinion.
Yeah, like subtle stuff is really funny.
Yeah, it's done subtly, which I think they both pull off pretty well, especially Zombieland. I think Zombieland and breaking the fourth wall they're more overt on that for sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you got to be careful because when you're looking directly at the audience,
it's like in like the Ferris Bueller.
In like Ferris Bueller, right? Mm-hmm. But Ferris Bueller, they pull that off really well.
But in some movies, sometimes I don't think that doesn't happen in other movies.
Well, in one of in a horror movie that neither of you have probably seen, but Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, there's a sequence.
It's crazy that you even know.
There's a sequence where Jason, of course, gets reanimated. There's a cemetery caretaker who's discovers that Jason's grave is empty, and so he's just putting sand or dirt back into the grave to cover it back up because he doesn't want to get in trouble. And he then, and he's talking to himself the whole time. And then he looks up and he just basically is staring right at the camera. And he says, some folks have a strange idea of entertainment or something like that. And so he's looking right at you. It's like, why are we doing a sixth Friday the 13th movie, right? You know.
Oh, and they're just making fun of themselves.
Yeah, and so that's just a one-off weird sequence there in that movie, but I think that was pretty funny.
Wait, how many Friday the 13th are there?
Oh my gosh, are we up to 9? I think.
Yeah, we're diverging for sure.
9 or 10, but no. So anyway, I think that's all we've got for this episode. We will be talking, I think, about The Witch next week. Yeah. Is that the plan?
Yeah,
I heard that was really scary, so I might not be here.
Yeah, that would be no Jamey.
Well, and this will be good because, Gene, you brought up The Witch a couple episodes back, and we were starting.
It was last episode.
Okay, thank you. I'm old. Time passes differently than for you, but we were beginning to touch on what is a horror movie, the elements of horror, and I think right. The Witch will be a good movie to illustrate that conversation even more. Right. So,
yeah, good.
Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you the next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.